On today's show, what's going on with Max Strus? I'll tell you what I know next. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit about the season Caris LeVert and Isaac Okoro are both having on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, my new Substack, The Inside Shot, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. You can also check the show out on YouTube. If you're watching this video right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show, of course, is sponsored by Robinhood. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. We're going to talk Max Strus. I want to talk about Caris LeVert. I want to talk about Isaac Okoro, but Max Strus is the big news because he has not yet made his season debut. I know that it was reported by ESPN at some point last week that it was supposed to be Friday against the Washington Wizards. Well, Max didn't play on Friday. He was ruled out Thursday night after Kenny Atkinson told us following practice that the team was going to evaluate after shoot-around Friday whether or not Max would play that night against Washington. And then he was ruled out a few hours after that. And then a lot of people thought, okay, well, if it's not Friday, it's probably going to be Monday against the Brooklyn Nets. Well, as I record this Sunday night, Max has already been ruled out. He was ruled out when the NBA's injury report came out at 5:30 on Sunday evening, not going to be making his season debut in Brooklyn. Now, this leads a lot of people to question, okay, well, does that mean there was a setback? Did something go wrong near the end as Max Strus was starting to ramp up his rehab process and get back to be on the floor? I've been led to believe that there has not been a setback, that this is not some cause for concern with Max. And I want to start this conversation off by reading what Kenny Atkinson said. He was asked about this prior to the game on Friday against the Washington Wizards. I believe Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com was the one to ask this question. And Kenny said, Max is progressing. He had two great days of practice. I would just say we take our time, and I'm a part of that. I'm a part of that decision-making process, and we want to make sure there's no setbacks. So we want to make sure he's ready. And personally, I'm a little bit more conservative. I push for that. But at the end of the day, he's going to feel it. He's going to know, but he's progressing phenomenally. And I would say he had 2 darn good days of practice, so we should see him soon. I'm not going to give you the exact date yet. Now, coaches, and I will say, all across sports, coaches are not paid to tell the truth. When they meet with the media, there's no requirement that there's a requirement they meet with the media. There's not a requirement to tell the truth. I think Kenny Atkinson really does like to tell the truth. I don't think that he wants to talk around things. I think he gives very truthful and honest answers. And when he says that after what happened the day before, I think it's really easy to say, okay, well, he's probably not telling the truth there. I don't think he's lying about this because I've talked to other people too that would be in the know with this aside from hearing what Kenny had to say. And the consensus is just kind of, you know what, the ramp-up process is what it is. There wasn't a setback. They want to make sure that he's really, truly good to go before he's back on the floor playing full-speed NBA basketball games. They don't want to rush him back out there. And part of it, too, is this team's 22-4. They've had a great start to the season. Max Strus is going to be a really nice addition. But the point they're at in the schedule, it gives them time, too. So they play tonight against Brooklyn, and then they've got 3 days off. This is a team that hasn't practiced a ton throughout this year. I think they've had 3, maybe 4 legitimate practices, maybe 5 legitimate practices since the season started back on October 23rd in Toronto. Just because of the way the schedule has been, they've not practiced a ton. Now, they practiced twice last week, I believe it was. Once in Miami, once in Cleveland. If I had to bet, they're going to practice again in Cleveland when they get back from New York after Monday night's game. Maybe Wednesday, maybe they practice on Thursday too. Maybe the Cavs have 2 days of practice this week. I think that those are looked at as opportunities for Max Strus to ramp up more, to get his legs underneath him a little bit more, to feel more comfortable on the floor. Because Kenny can talk about how Max has had these really great practices, and I have no reason to believe that he hasn't. And then the same thing can be true that he just needs a little bit more time, that he needs to feel a little bit more comfortable trusting his body and getting himself back onto the floor. I've not spoken to Max. I don't know what he's thinking, but I think it's a fair thing to think, okay, he might just need another week. That maybe instead of seeing him on Monday, which we know we're not going to do, maybe Friday night against Milwaukee is what we see. Or maybe he plays Saturday against Philly. I would be surprised, I will say, if he played both ends of that back-to-back. I'd be very surprised if he played both Friday and Saturday night for his first action of the season. I think that'd be a surprising thing. And I think he's somebody that's going to come back on a minutes restriction too. But when Kenny Atkinson gave that answer, I don't think he was lying about that. I think that the Cavs are being conservative here. I don't think that there was some sort of setback. I've been told that there wasn't, that this is just, they're being conservative. They want Max Strus to, when he gets back on the floor for game action, they want him to feel like he's Max Strus. They don't want him to feel like he has to think about his ankle. And I get that. And I did mention too last week, I was told at the start of this month, I was told that the target for Max's return was the middle of December. I wasn't told it was the Washington game. I wasn't told it was the Brooklyn game. I wasn't told it was the Milwaukee game, the Philly game. I was not told a specific game. I've been told by multiple people that the middle of December was the target date for Max to be back on the floor. And to me, that didn't say, okay, it's Washington or it's Brooklyn. It said it's kind of any of those 4 games that I just mentioned. Like next Friday, December 20th, I still personally consider that the middle of December. Like if he doesn't play this upcoming weekend, Friday and Saturday, I think then it's pretty fair to start to have more questions about this. But I think we should be willing to see it through then before like, okay, what's really going on here? I'm not saying that it's crazy to have questions about it, considering who reported what was reported last week with ESPN reporting Max would be back on Friday. So I totally get that. But I think that the Cavs are just opting, and I think Max is part of this too. I think they're opting to be a little bit more conservative, to give him, potentially another full week off from the time that a lot of people thought he was going to be playing because of a report compared to when he might actually be on the floor again. I just think that is I think it's a fair thing to think, okay, the team's in great shape. The play on the wing has been really good with Isaac Okoro and Caris LeVert. I'm going to talk about them coming up in a minute here. Let's give Max all the time that he needs. And I think that's a really fair thing to do. If it gets later, like if we're in late December and he's still not back on the floor, I think then it would probably be time to worry. But I don't think that we're there yet. Maybe this ramp-up period is taking a little bit longer than expected, but that doesn't mean that there was a setback. Sometimes guys go through 2 practices on back-to-back days, the way Max did last week, and come out of it a little bit more sore than they thought they would. That happens when you're returning from an injury. I don't know for sure that that's what happened with Max. I don't. But I think that's a very real possibility. And being sore after having 2 legitimate NBA practices for the first time in a long time isn't something that should be considered a setback either. I don't think that's something to be concerned about. I think anyone in Max's position would probably feel that way. Again, I don't know that for sure. I don't know that that's why he didn't play Friday and isn't playing tonight. But I think that's a pretty logical thing to think. I think that's an area where it's okay. There's a good chance that's what happened. Like, I think that's a very fine line of thinking. And then lastly on this, I think the Cavs are taking a long-term approach on this. I've mentioned the record a couple times that they're 22-4 through 26 games. They've been the best team in basketball. The play on the wing, I think, has been really good. Caris LeVert's been super consistent. Isaac Okoro has been shooting the lights out. Max Strus is going to help this team. But it's more important that Max Strus feels like Max Strus when he's helping this team because that's going to make this team better. And let's be truthful here too. Is it more important that Max Strus helps this team at the end of December, or that Max Strus feels good and doesn't rush back and helps this team in April, May, and June? I think everybody listening knows the answer to that question. It's just, how do you get there? What's that process look like? And I can't necessarily blame the Cavs for being conservative with this. Now, if they were, instead of 22-4, if they were 18-10, does this look different? I don't know. Those numbers don't add. 16-10, right? Yeah, 16-10. Do those numbers look different? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know that they do. I don't know that they don't. But I think they're in a position where it's okay if they want to operate like this. I can't blame them for wanting to operate like this. And I don't think that right now there should be any concern with Max Strus. Again, if we get past this weekend and we're talking, and I'm talking to you a week from right now, and Max Strus has still not played, okay, totally understand worrying about it. But I don't think that the time to worry about it has quite arrived yet. And I think a lot of that worry is probably influenced by a report that came out last week. And that is what it is. Part of the reason why I do think that being conservative with Max Strus and bringing him back makes sense is the play the Cavs got on the wing. Caris LeVert's been awesome. Isaac Okoro has been awesome. I think it's time to give those guys a little bit of praise. So we're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. That's Robinhood.com/gold. ROBINHOOD.com/GOLD. Terms to apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Today's show is also brought to you by BetterHelp. It's that time of the year where it might be a little cold outside, right? If you're in Cleveland, it's been cold, it's been snowy. It's a great time to just cozy up by the fireplace, maybe have a warm mug of hot chocolate, hot cocoa, maybe coffee, whatever you're into. I don't know what you want to drink, but I know that a lot of those things are relaxing for me and other people, maybe watching a movie. Another way, holiday movie is great to watch this time of year. And for some, that's the best way to spend the month of December. But for others, maybe therapy is the way that you should be spending some time this month, because it's a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season of comfort that we're in right now changes. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the Locked On Cavs podcast. I want to spend some time talking about Isaac Okoro and Caris LeVert, because those are two guys that I don't think that we spend enough time talking about with this Cavs team. They're 22-4. Donovan Mitchell has been fantastic. Darius Garland's had a great bounce back to this season. Evan Mobley has absolutely taken a step forward offensively. We can talk about all those things, and those are without a doubt the biggest reasons why this Cavs team has been so good. But I think Isaac Okoro and Caris LeVert have been a big part of that success too. So I want to start with Okoro because this year he's shooting the lights out. And I understand he's not taking them at a big volume. He's shooting, I believe, 48.2, 48.3, right around there, somewhere in that neighborhood from 3-point range. It's not a high volume. It's less than 3 per game, but he has been so effective there that I do think we're getting to the point where defenses are going to have to start respecting him, and he's going to start to have a little bit of gravity that I don't know that he's ever had in his career. Because if you go back and you include last year and this year, because this year is still a small sample size for him. I don't have the total number of threes that he's taken, but it's probably around 60-ish, maybe 65. So if you look at that, that's not a big number. But if you combine last year where he took over 200 threes and this year where he's on pace to shoot a few more, but not many, and combine the percentage that he shot, because at that point, I think it stops being a small sample size thing. He's shooting 41% from three. And I think that's a really big deal that Isaac Okoro, who somebody once upon a time was a guy that teams did not even think twice about having to defend, has become, in what is a decent sized sample here, a 40+% 3-point shooter. Now, is he that on a large volume? I don't know. I don't know if he's still a 40% 3-point shooter, if he's taking 5 or 6 threes a game, but I also think he's someone very capable of what we saw on Friday night, where he hit 3 out of 4 threes against Washington. And I think one of the other things about Okoro that's been really good so far this year is his role on offense has expanded to where in previous years he would kind of stand in that corner. Sometimes if the defense would fall asleep, he would cut to the basket and finish. And I do think that he is a good cutter. And that was kind of it. We very rarely saw him take threes above the break. We very rarely saw him set screens. We very rarely saw him handle the ball. It was kind of the things I've said and a little bit of stuff in transition. And this year, we've seen him used as a screen setter. We've seen him operate in the short roll, and I think do a really good job of making decisions. Go back to that game against Boston that the Cavs won in Cleveland, where what was sort of the game-deciding play? It was Isaac Okoro setting a screen for Donovan Mitchell, Mitchell getting trapped, throwing the ball to Okoro in the short roll, and then the defense collapsing on him, Kristaps Porzingis attacking him to prevent him from going up with the basketball for a shot. What's he do? He dumps it off to Evan Mobley, who dunks it with 2 hands, and the Cavs go up by 4 points and ultimately win that game. And I understand there was more to it, but that was the play that sort of was like, okay, the Cavs are going to win tonight. Isaac Okoro has done that sort of stuff all the time this year. He's made, I think, more winning plays this year than he has in the past. And it's not to say he wasn't a winning player in the past, because that's not true. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I think that he has expanded his game to be able to do these sort of winning plays that maybe haven't necessarily always been part of his repertoire in the past. And I think that's a really good sign of growth for him. And then you look at what he's doing defensively, where he's still a really strong defender. He's still one of the better perimeter defenders in basketball. I don't know that I'd say he's the best perimeter defender in basketball, but he's not lost anything on that end of the floor either. So I think that he's somebody who, and Kenny Atkinson mentioned this on Friday, that he's not talked about enough as a reason for their success. And I am curious what his role is going to look like when Max Strus returns. But I do think Isaac Okoro deserves a ton of credit for how good he's been this year. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about that, because I do think that is something that has been valuable to the Cavs. I think that's something that has made them a better basketball team. And the other guy that's true of, I think, is Caris LeVert. Caris is having, I don't know if it's the best season of his career just because of where the volume is at, but it is without a doubt the most efficient season that Caris LeVert has ever had so far this year. And LeVert's played 20 games. I believe he missed 4 games with that knee issue he was having. Shooting 52.5% from the floor. That is a career best. Previous career high was 45%. Shooting 46% from 3, which went down on Friday because I think he was 0 of 3 or 4 from 3. He was shooting like 52% before Friday. Also a career high. Previous high was 39%. So he has, and I think part of the reason why that, one, he's been getting really good looks from 3. That's part of it, which, I think credit there goes to some other guys for creating those looks. And 2, with the overall shooting percentage, his shot selection has been better. I think he's taking fewer mid-range shots than he's ever taken in his career. I think that's a big reason why his shooting percentage is better because he's taking more efficient shots. It's the 3-pointers. It's getting to the basket. It's doing the things that Kenny Atkinson wants to see him do. He, I think, has really listened to what Atkinson has had to say from a coaching standpoint and thrived under him, which is no surprise considering that the history those two have together from their time in Brooklyn with the Nets. So Caris's effective field goal percentage this year is 63. The previous high for his career was 52.5. That's a huge jump. Like, that number to me speaks just how much better Caris is as an offensive basketball player this year. And he's somebody else too that could talk about defensively. I do think he's a really good defender. It's part of the reason why over the last few years, I personally have been higher on Caris LeVert than I think a lot of other people. I think there are a lot of Cavs fans that might not be as high on Caris LeVert as I have been on Caris LeVert. And then, in his first few years too, it has felt like he was very up and down, sort of inconsistent. Didn't necessarily, and I know that it's hard to have your best stuff every single night. Nobody does, but it felt as if he fluctuated a little bit more than most. Like, you wouldn't be surprised with the 41-point game he had against Boston 2 years ago when Darius Garland was out of the lineup with that lacerated eyelid. That didn't surprise anybody. But you also wouldn't necessarily be surprised if Caris LeVert had 5 points on 1 of 8 shooting. Where now, I still don't think you'd be surprised if he had that type of offensive outburst with one of Mitchell or Garland out of a game for whatever reason. But if Caris goes 1 of 8 and only scores 5 points, I think that's a pretty surprising thing to a lot of people because he has developed quite a bit of consistency. And the last thing I'll say on Caris too, the plus minus stat doesn't always tell the full story. There are sometimes it doesn't tell the story at all. But this year with Caris LeVert, he has had one of the best plus minuses in all of the NBA, one of the best net ratings in all of the NBA. So of the 20 games that he's played, Caris has been a negative only 3 times. So that means the Cavs have been outscored by their opponent when Caris LeVert has been on the floor only 3 times all year. The Cavs are 1-2 in those games. So of the 3 times Caris LeVert has been a minus in the game, the Cavs have lost twice. Their other 2 losses, Caris LeVert did not play in. So those numbers, that statistic, I think tells a pretty good story of just how important Caris LeVert has been to this team. And I think how good he's been for this team too. I think he's somebody that deserves a good chunk of credit for his play this year. And also, I think one of the most underrated parts of his game is his ability to create for others, his playmaking abilities. Per 36 minutes, he's at over 6 assists. I just think he's an awesome passer. His turnovers are not very high either. I think that he's been such a bright spot for this team that probably does not get the love he deserves. He's been really good, so I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about him. I spent a couple of minutes this weekend talking to Emoni Bates. Bates made his season debut playing for the Cleveland Charge. I went to that game. I'm going to tell you what I saw. I'm going to tell you what Emoni and I talked about next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is, of course, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Monday Night Football tonight. We've got a couple of Monday Night Football games. Not sure why there are 2 of them, but we've got the Chicago Bears traveling to Minnesota, my old home, taking on the Vikings. Vikings 7-point favorites in that one. I like Minnesota. Chicago's offense just not very good with Caleb Williams right now. Maybe it'll get better. I don't know, but not very good right now. And then you've got Atlanta going to Vegas. Atlanta 5.5-point favorites on the road. I like that. I think Vegas is awful. What you might want to do is maybe put, I don't know, if you're looking to take home that $150 in bonus bets, maybe you cook up a little 2-team parlay. Take the Vikings -7, the Falcons -5.5. That comes out to plus 274 on FanDuel. Bet $5, win $13.74 plus that $150 in bonus bets. That's just one reason of many reasons why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. So what you need to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to join today. And like I said, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. As I mentioned, I talked to Emoni Bates this weekend. He played for the Cleveland Charge, made his season debut on Saturday night. So I wanted to go to that game for a couple of reasons. One, the Charge have moved into Public Hall in Cleveland, which I think is a really cool environment. It's a really unique, super cool venue for basketball. There's a lot of history in that building. I don't know how many venues in American professional basketball are quite like Cleveland Public Hall. And I wanted to go check it out. I wanted to see what it was like. They played Friday. Obviously, I went to the Cavs-Wizards game on Friday, so I wanted to go on Saturday. And also, I was told Friday night that, there's a pretty strong chance Emoni Bates was going to be making his season debut. So I thought, oh, well, this is perfect. I'll get to see what basketball looks like there. I'll get to see Emoni play for the first time this year. And I also got to watch Jalen Tyson play, Craig Porter Jr. play, JT Thor had a really good game. Luke Travers did not play after having a really good game Friday night. He did not play Saturday for the Charge. But I wanted to see all of those things, and I'm really glad I went. Emoni played 24 minutes. He came off the bench. He was, I believe, 4 of 12 shooting, 2 of 9 from 3. Looked like he was moving around relatively well. I sat down with him. I talked to him for a handful of minutes after the game. And one of the things that he really conveyed to me in our conversation was that he felt like this layoff from basketball, which he mentioned was the longest in his career. Like, he's gone without being, healthy. It was the first time he's had surgery. And I did, full disclaimer, I wrote a full story on this for my Substack, The Inside Shot. If you want to go check that out, it's a link to my Substack is in the episode description. So I talked to him, and one of the things that he conveyed to me throughout this layoff, which was the longest he's had, is that he really feels as if he learned patience. Like, he learned how to be more patient with himself, with the process, with everything through this layoff, because it's not something that he's experienced. And I do think that while I don't know what his basketball future is going to be, I don't know if he's ever going to be an impact player on the Cavs. I think he has the talent to do it. I think he has some development that needs to be done before we get there and before we start seriously considering that. But I think that if that happens, if one day Emoni Bates becomes a rotation player on the Cavs, that we might look back at him needing knee surgery and him having to take a step back for a couple of months and sort of just like take a deep breath and learn a little bit and learn that patience and learn how to develop a little bit more. I think that could ultimately be one of the biggest blessings in disguise for his career. It was a minor knee injury. He said it was mostly a wear and tear thing. He actually mentioned that he played through summer league with it, and his knee kept getting swollen, but he couldn't necessarily move around the way he wanted to. And now he's back and he's feeling good. He did say about his play on Saturday night that he was a little apprehensive to go to the basket. Like I mentioned, he shot 9 threes out of 12 field goal attempts. And I don't know that that's always going to be that's not what a shot profile for him should look like. He should be getting downhill more. I still think he's got some J.R. Smith in his game. I do. The first basket he made was like a 9-1-1-3 from the left wing. It was heavily contested. It was at the end of the shot clock. I don't know that he necessarily caught a grenade, but he needed to go up with it. Like, he didn't have a choice. And that was after missing 2 threes. This one, of course, was just bottom of the net. It was perfect because that's the type of shot. He's a tough shot maker. But I do think overall that if he ends up one day being a rotation player for the Cavs, that he might be able to point to this experience that he's had over the last 2.5, 3 months as, okay, this ultimately helped me. Even though surgery is not something anyone wants to ever do, it's not pleasant. This is something that ultimately could make him a better basketball player in the long term. I do think that he's developing. I think he's on the right track. We'll see where it goes. But that was sort of what my conversation with Emoni was like over the weekend after watching him play. Like I mentioned, I wrote a full story on this at The Inside Shot, a link to my Substack is in the episode description, no matter where you're listening to this. But thank you for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. No matter where you get your podcasts, we're there. Apple, Spotify, everywhere else. Also available on YouTube, as I mentioned. If you're watching, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content, like the Locked on Cavs whip around show, going to be back this afternoon, talking Bucks, talking Sixers. I couldn't talk to anybody about the Nets, so I talked about the Nets for a few minutes, but covering the week ahead for the Cavs as they've got 3 games starting tonight in Brooklyn. Talked about that all, so make sure that you're subscribed everywhere you get your podcasts and keeping an eye out on YouTube, because that will be coming your way later on today. And then I'll be back tomorrow talking about the Cavs taking on the Brooklyn Nets as their week begins.